This is his actual bunker. And it really looks like kind of an Aztec pyramid or some Egyptian structure from ancient times.
In August 2025, Shaun and Caroline Tullier thought that they were just renovating their Guernsey home. Instead, they broke into a basement that felt ripped from a World War II thriller. Beneath the floorboards lay a Nazi bunker, sealed for decades, complete with a James Bond-style escape hatch and a chilling German warning scrawled on the wall. But here's the twist. This wasn't just a relic. What they uncovered hints at a secret evacuation network that Allied forces never managed to trace. But this British couple's discovery is just the tip of the iceberg. What if every Nazi bunker hid the same terrifying secret? The living bunkers phenomenon. What made the Guernsey bunker so haunting wasn't just its concrete walls or the rusting steel doors, it was the life still inside it. Shaun and Caroline Tullier found bottles stacked neatly in the corner, water containers still capped, and ventilation systems that looked like they could have been switched on yesterday. It felt less like a ruin and more like a room someone had just walked out of. And maybe that's the point. These bunkers weren't abandoned, they were evacuated. Now, think about that for a second. We're taught to imagine World War II bunkers as tombs, sealed after surrender, filled with dust and silence. But when you look closer, they tell a different story. The Guernsey site had a working escape hatch disguised beneath a trap door. German messages were still legible on the walls. Every detail screamed readiness, like the soldiers never intended to die inside but to slip away unseen. And Guernsey isn't the only example. In Austria, beneath a quiet forest, researchers stumbled onto something far darker. It looked like another bunker, but testing revealed traces of uranium, still giving off radiation more than 70 years later. That site wasn't a shelter. It was part of a weapons facility. Evidence suggests it was tied to Nazi nuclear experiments, a project they denied was ever close to completion. But the radiation doesn't lie. It proves the work was active, and then suddenly, gone. Just like Guernsey, it wasn't sealed as a ruin. It was left as if the people inside had picked up and vanished overnight. Historians call this strange pattern the living bunkers phenomenon. Facilities that don't look bombed, burnt, or dismantled. Instead, they feel paused. Food tins stacked, weapons in racks, personal items left behind. Almost as if the occupants got a warning and fled through tunnels we haven't fully mapped. Take the Mazy Battery in Normandy. When it was rediscovered decades after the war, the site was so preserved that it looked like the troops had just stepped outside for roll call. Artifacts were frozen in time, medical supplies, ammunition crates, and even paperwork were left in drawers. There was no systematic destruction, no signs of a planned handover. It was more like an interrupted moment, as if someone sounded the alarm and told them to move. Now. And that's where the mystery deepens. Why abandon functioning fortifications in a hurry? Why leave behind equipment, supplies, and even nuclear research when the Reich was supposedly fighting for survival? If these bunkers were destroyed, we could explain it. But if they were evacuated, then the question isn't what happened inside them. It's where everyone went after they left. The living bunkers phenomenon pushes us to rethink the final days of the war. Because if soldiers and scientists weren't killed or captured inside, then maybe they were moved somewhere else, somewhere more secret. Did they escape through networks of tunnels we still haven't uncovered? Did they regroup at hidden sites designed to outlast the Reich itself? And if so, who orchestrated such a massive disappearing act at the exact moment Germany was collapsing? It's unsettling to imagine. These places don't feel like relics. They feel like stages abandoned mid-performance, waiting for actors who never came back. And every bottle, every weapon, every preserved bunker tells the same story. This wasn't the end. It was the exit. But here's where things turn from strange to chilling. Because the key to this entire network of living bunkers, the secret routes, the sudden evacuations, the hidden facilities, was known by one man. He was the architect of escape, the guardian of maps no Allied soldier ever saw. And in May 1945, just when his knowledge could have rewritten history, he simply vanished without a trace. So, the question here is, who was he? And where did he go? The Kammler connection, Hitler's master builder. The story of the living bunkers leads us straight to one man. A man who, more than anyone else in the Reich, understood how to hide entire worlds beneath the ground. His name was Hans Kammler. Kammler wasn't some faceless bureaucrat. He was the SS general who oversaw the construction of Auschwitz itself, the place that became the darkest factory of death in human history. But while that alone would etch his name in infamy, Kammler's true legacy ran deeper, literally. Because after Auschwitz, he was put in charge of Nazi Germany's most secret weapons projects. Rockets, jets, underground research labs. Kammler was the man who made them possible. Think about that. The same person who designed crematoriums also controlled the V-2 rocket program, the world's first long-range ballistic missile. These weren't isolated jobs. They were connected by the same skill set, building vast underground networks that could keep the Reich alive when everything above ground was crumbling. He knew every tunnel, every bunker, every escape hatch across Nazi territory. If anyone understood how the living bunkers were evacuated without a trace, it was Kammler. But here's where it gets eerie. As the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, Kammler didn't go down with it. He vanished. And the stories about his fate don't add up. One account says he ordered his aide to shoot him near Prague. Another insists he swallowed cyanide in the woods. A third claims he died in battle. But when you dig into the details, each story falls apart. No consistent witnesses, no confirmed grave, nothing solid. Instead, there's a fog of contradictions, almost as if someone wanted the truth buried. And then comes the most explosive theory, that Kammler wasn't killed at all, that he was secretly captured by the Americans. Why would the US want him? Simple. Kammler had the keys to the kingdom. He knew where the underground labs were hidden, where scientists were working, and where rocket designs were buried. He didn't just oversee projects like the V-2. He held the blueprints for technology that would define the future. Jet propulsion, advanced weapons, even the foundations of space travel. And the timing couldn't be more suspicious. The same weeks when Kammler supposedly died were the very weeks when entire bunker networks were evacuated. Supplies abandoned. Facilities meticulously sealed. Personnel disappearing. It looks less like chaos and more like an operation. And if anyone had the authority to orchestrate such a mass evacuation, it was Kammler. Here's where things get even stranger. Recently declassified documents hint that Kammler may have struck a deal, that instead of standing trial at Nuremberg, he offered his knowledge to the Americans in exchange for safety. Remember, this was the dawn of the Cold War. To Washington, Nazi technology wasn't just evidence, it was leverage. If Kammler could deliver hidden scientists, blueprints, and underground complexes, then keeping him alive and out of sight might have seemed like a bargain too tempting to refuse. And if that's true, then the living bunkers we've uncovered aren't just relics of Nazi paranoia. They're footprints of a handover, a quiet transfer of knowledge from the ashes of Hitler's Reich straight into the hands of the United States. So, the question isn't just what Kammler knew, it's what the Americans gained by keeping him alive. Because if Kammler's knowledge was absorbed into secret programs, then the Nazi bunkers weren't the end of the story. They were the beginning of something far bigger. But Kammler didn't just disappear. He was absorbed into a program that would redefine modern warfare, reshape the balance of global power, and even help carry Nazi technology beyond Earth itself. And that leads us to the chilling next chapter. So, what was this program? How did it work? And how far did it really go? Could it be that the very rockets that put America on the moon carried with them the fingerprints of the Reich? Operation Paperclip, the hidden deal. When Kammler slipped out of history's spotlight, he didn't vanish into thin air. He stepped into something bigger, an operation so vast that most people still don't grasp its scale. Operation Paperclip. On the surface, Paperclip sounded technical. In reality, it was one of the largest intelligence extractions in history. After Germany's surrender, the U.S. quietly relocated more than 1,600 Nazi scientists, engineers, and technicians. These weren't minor figures. These were the men who built the rockets that terrorized London, the jet engines that outpaced Allied aircraft, and the underground facilities we're only just beginning to uncover today. And this wasn't charity. It was a deal. America wasn't interested in punishing these men. It wanted what they knew. Together, they brought over $10 billion worth of patents, designs, and prototypes. In 1945, money. Adjust that for inflation, and you start to see the staggering value of the trade. Now think back to those eerie bunkers. Supplies stacked, systems ready to run. They weren't accidents. Evidence suggests many were staging areas, holding sites where scientists and technicians were gathered and prepared for extraction. If Guernsey felt like the soldiers had just stepped out, maybe they had, straight into the hands of American intelligence. And who would have coordinated it? The same man who held the maps to this underground world, Hans Kammler. Declassified testimonies even suggest Wernher von Braun, the rocket genius later celebrated at NASA, may have personally delivered Kammler into U.S. custody. For von Braun, securing Kammler meant securing his own survival. So, the story isn't that Kammler died in the woods. The story is that he was absorbed into a program designed to rewrite the balance of world power. But Paperclip wasn't just about rockets. It was about intelligence, medicine, chemical weapons, and even psychological warfare. Some of the doctors involved had conducted horrific human experiments in concentration camps. Instead of facing justice at Nuremberg, they were quietly flown to American labs. Their research was scrubbed clean and hidden under the label of national security. And suddenly, those bunkers looked different. Not ruins, but assets deliberately frozen in time. Equipment, documents, even entire labs waiting for Allied teams to scoop them up. What we call abandoned might have been staged. But how do you fund something this massive? Moving thousands of scientists, building secure American facilities, erasing their pasts? This wasn't cheap. That's where another Nazi operation comes in. Operation Bernhard. The largest counterfeiting scheme in history, Bernhard forced prisoners to forge millions of British pounds so perfectly that they fooled the Bank of England. These weren't just meant to crash the economy. They became a hidden war chest, stashed in tunnels, moved through covert channels, and later tapped for black-budget operations. Imagine this. The same tunnels carrying scientists out of collapsing bunkers are also carrying crates of counterfeit cash. Not treasure in the traditional sense, but fuel for a secret economy. So, here's the question that keeps historians awake. If Kammler's network delivered scientists, technology, and finances, what else slipped away in those hidden transfers? Because Paperclip wasn't just about men and machines. It was about wealth, gold, counterfeit currency, priceless art, resources that could fund shadow operations without leaving fingerprints. And that takes us to the next layer of this story. If Paperclip was about capturing brains, the next phase was about capturing treasure. Vaults of stolen art, gold reserves, and financial tools are buried in the very bunkers we're still uncovering today. So, we're left with the same haunting question. If these bunkers weren't just escape routes but secret vaults of Nazi wealth, what else is still sealed underground? The treasure network: art, gold, and secrets. If Operation Paperclip was about moving brains, then the next layer of this story was about moving treasure. Because behind every hidden bunker, every sealed hatch, there wasn't just science waiting. There were fortunes. Take the Amber Room. Once called the eighth wonder of the world, this glowing chamber of amber, gold leaf, and mirrors was dismantled by the Nazis in 1941 and shipped out of Russia piece by piece. Officially, it vanished in the chaos of the war. Unofficially, rumors place it underground. For decades, treasure hunters have scoured bunkers across Eastern Europe, especially in Poland, convinced the Amber Room is still sealed away in a Nazi vault. Some even point to a complex in Wrocław, where witnesses claim to see crates unloaded in the final days of the Reich. And that's not just fantasy. Museums and state-funded expeditions still chase these leads. Polish researchers have drilled into hillsides, mapped tunnels, and followed wartime diaries that hint at hidden chambers. One bunker, one tunnel, could change history overnight if those golden panels were ever found. Now, connect this with Project Riese, the vast underground city the Nazis carved into the Owl Mountains of Poland. Officially, it was meant for armaments and secret headquarters. But look closer. Massive galleries remain unfinished. Tunnels branch into nowhere, and entire sections are bricked off. Historians now suspect Riese wasn't just a military project. It was a storage hub, a vault for looted art, gold, and maybe even the Amber Room itself. Locals still whisper about convoys of trucks that rolled into the mountains in 1945 and never came back out. That ties directly into one of the most famous legends of the war's end: the Nazi gold train. In 2015, two explorers in Poland claimed to have found radar evidence of an armored train buried near Wałbrzych, loaded with gold, jewelry, and stolen art. The story spread worldwide. Excavations followed. Officially, nothing was found. But what stood out was the sheer plausibility. We know the Nazis moved treasure by rail, often under the cover of night, and we know trains vanished. If one train could disappear into a hillside, how many more were hidden in the networks of tunnels beneath? And remember Operation Bernhard, the counterfeiting scheme? Those forged British pounds weren't just printed. They were moved through tunnels, bunkers, and underground reservoirs. Survivors described rooms stacked with fake notes, ready for distribution. Imagine how perfectly those systems overlapped. Counterfeit cash to grease escape routes, gold and art to fund safe havens, and bunkers as the nodes in a shadow economy. When you look at it this way, the bunkers weren't random relics. They were financial junctions, places where stolen assets could be sorted, hidden, and moved into the pipelines of escape. Some resources went west, fueling Paperclip. Others went east, slipping into Soviet hands. And some, they may still be underground, untouched since the day soldiers sealed the blast doors. So, here's the tension. Every new bunker discovery, whether it's in Guernsey, Poland, or deep in the Alps, comes with the same chilling question. Are we walking into ruins or into vaults still holding stolen treasure? Because if even one of these sites gives up its secrets, the amber room, a gold train, or crates of counterfeit currency, it won't just rewrite treasure maps. It will force us to confront how the end of World War II was never really an ending at all. But the most shocking revelation isn't what was found in these bunkers. It's what this network means for history as we know it. Because if Nazi bunkers were more than ruins and more than treasure vaults, then what does that say about the way power truly shifted after 1945? The network revealed, rewriting history. When you step back and connect all of this, the Guernsey tunnels, the Riese complex, the vanishing trains, the sealed vaults, suddenly the pieces stop looking random. They begin to outline something bigger, a network. Not just a string of bunkers scattered across Europe, but a deliberate system designed for one purpose: evacuation. Look at the evidence. From the amber panels believed to be hidden in Polish tunnels, to the unfinished galleries of Riese, to the armored trains that disappeared near Wałbrzych, these weren't isolated mysteries. They were junctions. Each one is a node in a web where treasure, technology, and people could be moved under the fog of war. Historians have long treated them as separate legends, but when you map them together, you see routes of escape, corridors stretching from the heart of Germany out into occupied Europe, waiting to funnel the Reich's most valuable assets underground. And here's where the theory turns chilling. If these bunkers were part of a connected system, then what else slipped through? We already know Operation Paperclip moved scientists into American labs. We know Soviet forces captured entire factories intact. But if a hidden network existed, it means the Reich had far more time and control than we've been told. Leadership, weapons designs, looted fortunes, how much of it escaped through the shadows instead of being crushed in Berlin? Recent digs keep adding fuel. Excavations in Poland, documented even this year, reveal chambers too large for single-use storage. Researchers admit they still haven't mapped the full extent of the Riese tunnels. Some shafts stretch so deep they're still sealed by wartime explosives. What if those unexplored galleries aren't empty? What if they're the untouched arteries of a system that hasn't yet been fully exposed? Now think about the implications. If Nazi treasure and technology traveled through this network, then the space race, Cold War weaponry, and even post-war industry may have been built on more than just captured scientists. It could have been built on an entire infrastructure quietly repurposed after 1945. And if that's true, then the line between Nazi defeat and Nazi survival is blurrier than we want to admit. Which leaves us with the most unsettling possibility. This network might not be finished. For every bunker uncovered, there could be another still sealed. For every legend dismissed, a vault waiting to be opened. And that means history as we know it is still incomplete. So, the next time you hear about a newly discovered Nazi bunker, ask yourself, what else is still out there, waiting to be found? We've uncovered bunkers, treasures, and networks that suggest the Nazi war machine didn't just end. It went underground. But what do you think? Could the amber room or the gold train still be sealed away? Do these hidden tunnels prove the Reich had a larger escape plan? And most importantly, what would it mean if one of these vaults were opened tomorrow? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below.